So we got the SPE quad fuel pump kit in. Looks pretty nice to start with. Comes with, looks like a bulkhead for the wiring and some plugs. And I got I think these are fittings for the fuel pump connection to the bottom of the hat, but this will allow me to run, and it looks like it's looks like an 8 and a 10. So 10 outlet, and then a 10 AM feed, and then a 8 RB return. But we're actually gonna make the return 10 AM as well on my setup. Looks like that's where the fuel pumps go in. Looks like they screw in there. So yeah, I'm gonna head to the garage and start getting this thing put together. So getting things started, we had to take the blue piece, the 5 bolts from the blue piece of the hat apart so we can get into the hat to get to the Allen screw that's underneath to bolt it to the bottom part where the fuel pumps actually slide into place. So this is me taking it apart. As you can see, tightening up that screw. And then we're going to put the 5 screws back into place, and the fuel hat is ready for the fuel pumps. Decided to test fit just to make sure that I was doing everything right and make sure that the fuel pumps will go in with no problem, and it's time for the next step. Had a little mishap maybe in shipping or packaging or something, but there's a small dent there, and I thought it was gonna stop it from going in, but it went in fine. And like I said, the hat is O-ring, so it'll kind of seal the fuel pumps in place once you put it through the hat. But cool, so I can finish on these last bolts in. Looks like this is the port for the crossover. So from the factory, you have 2. It's a saddle tank design, so you have one main tank and then another overflow tank. I'm not going to be using an overflow tank, so I'm actually going to be plugging that hole, but it does come with the fitting for that. Next step is actually figuring out how these will incorporate onto these. So let's see. So, So I can definitely tell that this will be the end it goes over. There's like 2 nuts. 2 bolts. Let's see if we can get these things out. So it splits like that when you take the screw cap off. So I kind of see how it goes on now. Definitely gotta be careful not to lose these screws. So let's see if we can get it to go on. So actually, I think the easiest thing to be to get it on there, and then just slide it around. Oh, so that's how it goes. Pretty nice design there, I like it. So it slips around it. I ain't gonna lie, it's actually nicer than, I think that's a way nicer design than the 4. Then you just tighten up the screws. You really can hand tighten it. Shit, drop one. Wait, is the screw hole specific? Spot specific? Yeah, it is. All right. So now that's on and it is ready to go inside the fuel hat. So it goes something like this. Just push right in. And what we're gonna do, back it out a little bit and turn it. And then push it up so it goes inside and then screw it in. Yeah. And grab a wrench. Cool. And that is the first one installed. So I'm gonna grab my old 4 hat and I'll be right back. All right, we're back with the 4 hat. See them kind of next to each other. How about this? Uh-oh. Very similar design. I don't have my bottom part to my 4 hat on mine, but can verify that it does work without it. All right, so let's start getting this thing broken down and get these old pumps off and transferred over to the new hat. So now that I got all 3 of the old fuel pumps out the old 4 hat, it's time to start transferring over those last 3 pumps. So what I'm gonna do is pretty much repeat the process for the adapters that connect from the fuel pump to screw into the fuel hat, and rinse and repeat the previous steps to get those adapters on, which would be just taking the 2 screws out, sliding the clamps in, and then putting the 2 screws in on taking the 2 screws out, sliding the adapter on top of the fuel pump hose, sliding the 2 clamps into the adapter, and then put the 2 screws in. So we're going to rinse and repeat that until we have a completed fuel pump hat. So that fourth one was a pain in the ass, but here we go. Almost assembled. So now I'm just gonna get the fittings added to the top of the hat using the 80 RB fitting to 10 AN for the feet. I'm sorry, for the return line, and then just a 10 RB to 10 AN 90 for the feed line. So the next step is the wiring. I'm going to start off by getting rid of all the old connectors because I'm going to use a Deutsch connector for the power and the ground for all four of the fuel pumps. So get those taken out. Then we're going to start getting the wires ready to add the pins for the Deutsch connectors. So now just got the fuel pump held in place so I can just easily get to everything while I do the rest of the wiring. I'm gonna I'm gonna have to extend the wires out a little bit because the wires coming off of the fuel pumps are a little short to get through the bulkhead and out to the connector on the outside of the hat. So the first thing I'm gonna do is extend all 8 of the wires to get them outside of the fuel pump hat, and then we'll add the bulkhead fitting and the connector. So if you're wondering, these are some heat solder connectors. You pretty much use hot air to heat up the connectors, and there's a small amount of solder along with two, I'm not sure what the substance is, like you can see the orange little dots. You melt those in and they kind of form a grip around the wire, and then the solder melts the two strip back parts of the wire together, and it forms a super strong connection. And then I go over that with some, of course, some heat shrink, and just to make the connection all nice and clean. So now that we got all of the connections made, gonna get the wires to the bulkhead so we can start adding the pins. Now so I can get these wires trimmed evenly and get roughly about a 1/4 inch of wiring showing on each one in preparation for the Deutsch connector. We're going to start off by adding all the pins for the Deutsch connector on each of the wires. And then afterwards, we're going to work on getting that red gasket part of the bulkhead fished down through the wires, which is made a lot easier once you go ahead and add the pins to it first. Takes a little bit of pressure, and then it'll pretty much just slide down on all the wires. And once you get that, once you get all the pins in, like I said, get the gasket pushed down, and it goes on fairly easy. And after the red bulkhead gasket is down, you want to work on getting the second part of the bulkhead, which would be the black piece that bolts in with just 2 screws. Want to make sure that gasket is nice and tapped and flush into the pump hat, or else it'll make the black part that goes over it really hard to get into, and the screws will feel like they want an across thread. But once you get that, we can move on to the Deutsch connector install, which is pretty easy if you know how to use these. As you can see, the pins will just pretty much go in. I'll pull them into place and then throw the locking ring in, and that will all be done. And here we got our final product. We got the Deutsch connector with the 8 pinouts for the power and the ground for each fuel pump. And we will now be getting ready to throw it in the car. I feel like this thing came out great. looks great. Pump fitment is great. Honestly, I feel like this is a lot better setup over the 4. Still missing a few things for it to work with most stock car applications, but for this race car build, it'll work perfect.